Hey, what's up? My name is Tyson Brown and I want to welcome you to Tyson's Fitness Tips podcast. This is Australia's top health and fitness podcast to help you lose weight, look good with your shirt off, feel confident in your body, and finally achieve the goals you want with your health and fitness. So 5 days a week, I'm going to be giving you top information from myself and also from leading experts in the field so you know everything you need to do to get in the best shape of your life. From nutrition to mindset to workout, everything is covered in this podcast and you need to go nowhere else. So like I said, it's going to be 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, in your ears with quick, actionable segments that you can implement straight away, because the most important thing is that you can put these things into play. Also, if you listen all the way to the end of the episode, you're going to get 2 special gifts that you can download upon listening to it. So make sure you listen all the way to the end to get those free gifts, okay? So let's get into the episode. Rock and roll?
Absolutely.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tyson's Fitness Tips. Now, I'm pretty excited today because I get to bring on someone who's an expert in nutrition. I actually haven't had a proper nutritionist on yet, and what's even more exciting is that the guy that I'm bringing on today, Joel, he's actually from our own backyard here in Australia. So that's why I thought it'd be really cool to be able to reach out to him, connect, and just get him on the show so we can talk more about food and how you can make the best decisions possible to support your long-term health. So, Joel, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, Joel, for people who don't know about you, can you give us a bit more, like a bit of your background about how you actually came to where you are today in regards to nutrition?
Yeah, look, I guess I probably got an interesting journey. I don't know if you want the long version or the short version, but essentially I was always interested in health, had a particular interest in science throughout high school, and I actually did a biomed degree coming out of school. So I guess I ticked all those boxes, learned about physiology, biochem, biochemistry, microbiology and the like. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do as a profession, but it gave me a bit of a taste of all the sciences. And then I actually thought of going down the exercise physiology route or sports science route. And then it was actually about 10 years ago, and it was a bit of a chance meeting with someone who decided that he was pursuing a career in nutrition dietetics. And I actually thought to myself at the time, I thought, geez, why didn't I ever consider going down that path? So looked into it, and as they say, the rest is history, but decided that nutrition dietetics was probably a better fit for me than something like sports science. And, 10 years down the track, having gone down that journey, certainly no regrets. But I get to work with something I love day in, day out, and that's food. And I guess I get to help people on their health journey. So it's a really rewarding career, and certainly, finding my feet 6 years out of uni now. But yeah, loving every minute of it.
That's awesome. And I think the biggest thing, like the one reason that I actually wanted to reach out to you is because you talk about how much you love nutrition, but then you see on your Instagram page and, everywhere you are, like you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you're trying new things, you're getting your hands dirty, you're walking the walk and talking the talk. And I think it's a really cool approach when you can do something you love and basically you can just kind of talk about it 24/7 like I do with fitness. It's just like it's always there. It doesn't feel like it's a job, and you can just enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thanks for picking up on that. It's true. Funnily enough, I wanted to be a chef growing up. I think that was something I considered when I was 15, 16, and my parents talked me out of it because of the long working hours and poor conditions. But I feel like now, almost 20 years later, is that I get to cook, but I get to do it from the comfort of my own home. I don't have anyone critiquing my meals, other than my wife. But, it's a lot of fun, and I guess some of the work that I do is quite different from your run-of-the-mill dietitian, but I guess I get to do a lot of recipe development. So I'm currently working with a number of different brands and often using their products in different meals, and I get to call the kitchen my office. So, yeah, it's a pretty good thing that I'm on at the moment, to be honest.
And so, just a quick question doing that. Like, what's kind of your favorite type of dish you're working on at the moment? Like, is there do you use a certain food that you've really gotten into? Like, I don't know, steak or chicken, or maybe it's some lentils. Like, is there anything you've been using as like a base of your dishes lately?
It's a good question. I've actually recently gone pescatarian, so
Okay.
it was sort of a bit of a recent thing. But about 3-4 months ago, I decided to give away meat. But I'm always just experimenting with different things. I love plant-based proteins, so things like tofu, lentils, chickpeas, beans. So I'm always just playing around with different things. I don't know if I've really got a specialty as such in terms of a dish or a meal, but I just sort of throw different things together and call it a meal. Look, as I said before, I just have so much fun in the kitchen. It's sort of my happy place.
I love it. It's actually funny you say that because I do love my meat, but honestly, tofu and tempeh, they're two of my favorite protein sources. I really love, especially hard tofu. Like, you can do so many different things. It's so versatile, and it's just such a great little meal to have.
Absolutely. And I think, for us blokes, I do a lot of work in the space of men's health, and I think it's a really underutilized protein source. I think it's an underutilized food in general, but particularly for men's health, it's great for our heart. It's been shown to reduce cholesterol, and it's also really good for our prostates. And there's some evidence to show that it can improve sperm quality as well. So I'm often talking to my clients about increasing their vegetarian meals each week and maybe just aiming for 1 or 2, but actually using something like tofu or tempeh is a really good start. And as you said, it's so versatile in the kitchen. You can dress it up any which way. So, I think, maybe already one take-home message is get around tofu.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good takeaway. In regards to that, though, so this is kind of one of the things I wanted to address to you later on, but it's really good we've got to this, is like the myth about soy, because clearly tofu and tempeh are soy, and there's been all this debate about about producing estrogen and things in the body. Like, what's going on with that at the moment?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting space to work in, and the science is always changing. We're always finding out new things. But at this stage, there's no evidence to show that the phytoestrogens in soy actually influence our hormones, particularly men's hormones. So, there's that myth that it'll make you grow man boobs. That's completely false. Myth that it can reduce your testosterone. That's also been shown to be false. So there's really no harm in having soy-based products. And if anything, it's actually going to be really positive for those things that I've mentioned. So I think, get around it. It's a cheap source of protein. It's obviously quite lean as well, and it's freely available.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like, you could even start with something doing as simple as a Meatless Monday and, change your usual chicken dish to like a tofu dish, because it's not the exact same texture as chicken, but it does have that, especially if you get like a hard tofu, it kind of relates. It doesn't feel like you're missing out on that meaty, the meaty meal that you're going to have.
Absolutely. And I love the concept of Meatless Monday. It's something that I got around a couple of years ago. I'm not really a religious kind of guy, but if there's something I do follow religiously, I guess it's Meatless Monday. And you're right, because tofu, you can, it's quite similar to chicken, and you can do it in different ways. I've barbecued it, grilled it. You can add it to salads. You can even add it to soups. Obviously, you can even add it to cheesecakes and smoothies. So it's an incredibly versatile product.
Add it to smoothies? I did not know that.
Yeah, just the silken tofu.
Oh, right.
Actually works really, really well. And, the other flavors are probably going to mask or actually enhance the flavor of the tofu. So it's just another way of adding that extra nutrition in. Obviously, it's got some protein, it's got some iron in there, and if you get the calcium set one, you can even add in some extra calcium too.
That's really cool. That's going to be my little takeaway from straight away from today, is go get some silken tofu and try that.
There you go.
So, Joel, apart from, making a simple swap like that, just trying to add in a little bit more vegetarian to your diet, what are some other, certain foods that you encourage guys to change in their diet, to swap out, to make sure they're having just a healthier approach overall when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah, to be honest, we can focus on healthy swaps. I actually try to encourage my clients to increase or diversify their diets a little bit more. So actually adding extra things in rather than taking things out. I mean, what you find anyway, or what I found working with clients in private practice, is that by adding more things in, they inherently actually reduce some of those extra, maybe non-core foods.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to talk about, obviously a big thing for me is adding more veggies. And I see it all the time is people just don't eat enough. And I think the latest statistics actually show that about, I think it's 7% of the population meet their veggie requirements each day. So I think that's a really big one. And when people increase their veggie intake, they naturally eat less of the other things on their plate. So, the obvious swaps for me are things like, going for something like brown rice over a white rice, or choosing a leaner protein over a fattier cut of meat. So little things like that, or even opting for a healthy muesli bar or a piece of fruit over the packet of chips or chocolate at 3:00. But I'm actually encouraging my clients to add more things in. And I think at the moment what fascinates me is actually dietary patterns. I think for a long time we focused on single nutrients, and I think now we're sort of trying to focus on the bigger picture. And I bring you to the Japanese diet. I know we digress for a moment, but what the Japanese actually do is they have a wide array of different foods over the week. So us Aussies, we typically have the same 20 foods each and every week, but the Japanese tend to have about 70 different foods in their diet. So sometimes I like to focus on things that people can actually add in, and sometimes, that could be tofu, or that could be a new vegetable, or even adding something like lentils, which are also underutilized. So maybe focusing on the things that people can, as I keep saying, add into their diet rather than necessarily focusing on things to take out.
Absolutely. I love that you touched on that point, because I feel like, the first thing that when I get a lot more of my clients to start eating just, more lean sources of protein or adding in more vegetables, they're like, there's just so much food here. And I'm like, yeah, because when you look at what you're actually adding in, which is voluminous, whole, nutritious food, you're going to feel fuller quicker. And you're just going to feel like there's so much, you're never going to feel like you're on that quote-unquote diet, because the food is just so nutritious and filling.
Absolutely. And, when I meet with clients in private practice, they might have the potato with a piece of steak, or they might have the big bowl of pasta, but what's obviously missing are those non-starchy veg. So by adding those non-starchy veg, you're right, people are just going to eat less of those other energy-containing foods. So it's actually going to help with their weight loss anyway, before we even look at, healthier swaps.
Okay, and then so looking at, let's go on that the point of adding. Is there something you start off with, you start people doing? Is it simply starting with a vegetable source first before anything else, or what's kind of the easiest way to start adding more things into your diet?
Yeah, look, I guess it's obviously really individualized, but it could be that extra serve of veg at lunchtime. It could be the extra serve of veg at dinner, and it could just be healthier options as well. I mean, a typical case was yesterday. I met with a 40-year-old guy, and his diet was not exactly great. I didn't want to sugarcoat it for him, but I basically said, let's add a few more things in. Let's give you a few more options, so you're actually eating less of some of those, I'll call them junk foods in inverted commas. But I actually said to him, I said, it's okay to have the occasional burger at lunch or the occasional, Uber Eats meal, but let's actually give you some more options. So that's sort of my approach, and that's my style. And I think that actually resonates with a lot of the clients that I see.
Okay, so I guess so people being able to take a quick stock of what they're actually eating at the moment and when they eat. So let's say, like you said, they could add a vegetable sauce at breakfast or lunch or dinner, wherever it's going to be. Take mental stock of what you usually eat and if it's actually lacking anything. So, if you're having, let's say for lunch, you said you're having just that potato or whatever it is. It's can you add in an extra serving of broccoli or cauliflower or eggplant or whatever it is, just to add one serving of veggies to a meal that you feel like is lacking at the moment?
Absolutely. I mean, that's such a perfect start. I mean, it's not sexy advice, but it actually works, and it's really achievable for the everyday Joe. So I think a lot of people think if they have to lose weight or if they have to go on a diet, they have to drastically change things. But my approach has always been about baby steps. So it could just be as simple as something like that. I think that's a great little tidbit of advice.
And I like your approach of baby steps, because we have the same sort of philosophy when it comes to that. Because a lot of people, yes, of course, they come to us for a certain goal. They want to lose weight, but it's this is not a 9-week program that you do and then that's it. This is a lifetime of changing habits to make them good, long-term, and sustainable. Because when you can prolong that, that's when you're going to be able to have healthy, achievable, and sustainable long-run weight loss for the rest of your life.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad we sing from the same hymn book, because I see it all the time. People go on these crash diets and they just don't work in the long run. So I think it's about creating some of these new habits that are going to be sustainable in the long run. And that's really going to help people, live longer and, and improve their overall mental health, mood, well-being in general, but also their physical health.
Excellent. And so going down that route, Joel, we've talked about, obviously, trying to add in a little bit more vegetables into our diet, trying to swap out some meat for tofu or tempeh as a replacement. Is 1 to 2 times enough, do you think? Is there a certain amount of red meat we need to be careful for? What's going on that side of things?
Yeah, look, I think the general guidelines is around 3 serves of red meat a week. Look, I've done a little bit of work with Meat Livestock Australia, so I don't want to burn that bridge. But I'm a big lover of plant-based diets. I'm not fully vegetarian. I still eat fish. But I'm fascinated by people who go on the vegan diet. And I think it's, generally speaking, it's a little bit challenging for people, but it's such a great way of eating. And I don't necessarily think we have to eat meat to meet all our nutrient requirements. Obviously, you need to be mindful of things like iron, zinc, obviously B12, which is mostly found in animal sources. But I think generally speaking, we can reduce our meat consumption. It's going to be great for some of our, things like cholesterol, possibly weight, but it's also going to be really good for the environment. And I'm certainly starting to be a lot more mindful of the environmental impact of our diets.
I think that's a lot, one thing we do forget about is, there are other things apart from us that are actually out there that need our help when it comes to making sure this is sustainable for the next hundreds, thousands of years, wherever it's going to be. Because if we're just in this consumption mode all the time, we're doing mass production of animals and things like that, we just don't think about the long-term cost of that. Yeah,
and I think, it's actually quite humbling to actually be mindful and cognizant of those types of things. So I think there's probably more of a shift, and I'm really glad that there has been more of a shift towards some of these plant-based proteins. Obviously we're focused on the tempeh and the tofu and legumes, and I think sometimes it is as simple as including one extra vegetarian meal a week and maybe just having one less chicken meal or one less red meat meal a week. It actually, if you do that every week for the rest of the year, or for a year in general, that's 52 less meat-based meals. So I think that's a present for the environment.
That can actually be a good 2019 goal for people too, just to make one change like that. It's easy, it's simple, and it's more sustainable. It's nothing crazy. You're not completely cutting out meat. You're just doing it for once a week.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I really like that approach, and and that's a really achievable baby step that someone can take, and who knows what that can lead to. Obviously, we're focused on the environment, but maybe it'll help reduce someone's cholesterol, maybe it'll help reduce someone's weight. Probably help you save $1 as well in the meantime. So that's certainly not a bad thing.
Absolutely. And so Joel, when it comes to, there was one thing I read on your website about you like to, bust a couple of myths that circulate obviously in the media. And recently there's been a lot of things coming up about, I'm not sure if you heard about the Keto and the Carnivore diet, diets similar to that, but are they this goes back to the sustainability thing, are those things actually sustainable for people to stick to in the long run, do you think?
Yeah, look, I don't. I've got a few bugbears with the keto diet, and the carnivore diet hit my radar recently. But we started the conversation talking about the benefits of vegetables, exactly. And I think that's something that people forego on the carnivore diet. So I really don't think it's a sustainable way of eating, and obviously we've just focused on the environment as well. I mean, surely that's not good for the environment, and animals in general. But look, I don't want to be the fun police here, but I don't think the keto diet is all that sustainable, and I'm just not sure why we're told, or people are claiming that we should give away things like whole grains and legumes and soy-based products, certain veggies, a number of fruits as well. I touched on it before, but I think we're so focused on single nutrients that we lose sight of the bigger picture. And, at the moment, carbohydrates are in the firing line and sugars are obviously in the firing line. But I think, we can focus on those types of things. But I think when we're excluding, something like a whole grain, we're actually excluding valuable nutrients. We might be excluding a range of B vitamins, folate, even iron, and there's actually a little bit of protein found in some of these whole grains. So I think we need to focus on the bigger picture of what we're actually missing out on. It's so much more than just a source of carbohydrate. I think there's an opportunity for some people to reduce the amount of carbs that they're having, and certainly an opportunity for people to reduce the amount of sugar. But do they need to go on something like the keto or a paleo or an extremely low-carb diet to achieve health? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm really glad you went down that route, because like we talked about earlier, how important vegetables and things like that are, and legumes. There's fibre, there's so many things we get from the... Yeah, and we get so we don't just we think about at the moment carbs are evil, and then it used to be fat's evil, but it's there's no single macronutrient that is evil. Our body has been designed to be able to utilize the macronutrients and the micronutrients that those macronutrients are holding, and so that's why we can't, like you said, we can't demonize these foods, but we can make a conscious decision to cut back on certain types.
Absolutely, and if we go back to some of those switches that we talked about earlier, an easy switch would be to switch from something like a refined carbohydrate to something that's whole grains, to something that keeps all those nutrients intact, and obviously you're going to get all that fibre too. So it's a really interesting one. I'm really big on something like whole grains and obviously legumes too, because they're such valuable sources of nutrition, and I think to pigeonhole them as just a source of carbohydrates really does neglect all the other positives that they have.
Yeah, for sure. Like putting that stigma on that certain food group, it's okay, and we don't really know the whole picture either, because you made a post about, is it just is sugar really the enemy? And it's well, not necessarily. It's people say, okay, I'm going to cut out all carbohydrates, when they don't actually realize what carbohydrates are made up of. Because a lot of people say, I'm cutting out carbohydrates, but it's I'm still having fruit. It's the way the media portrays it is very different to what people actually get a comprehensive understanding of.
Yeah, look, I think people are confused. I mean, when you get people, it's obviously a question I ask, because a lot of people come in and they say they've cut out carbohydrates, and I really try to clarify what that means. If someone's reducing their consumption of sugary biscuits, lollies, chocolates, soft drinks, that's a fantastic thing. But if someone's cutting out things like oats and brown rice, sweet potato, I mean, that's probably not such a good thing. So that's something that we need to address. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about balance. And I focused before on the Japanese diet, but another one of these diets that I love is the Mediterranean diet, and it actually celebrates those legumes, it celebrates whole grains. And as we know, the Mediterranean way of eating is, it's not only sustainable, but it actually confers a really strong health benefit if we're looking at cardiovascular health outcomes, but also mental health, which is a huge area of research at the moment.
Sorry, Joel, you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you may have cut out.
No, I was just sitting there listening. And so, There's actually one more thing I wanted to cover, because I love that you went down that like you have it actually on your Instagram page, you have it on your on your website, which is like dairy. A lot of people have been demonizing dairy for it's actually been in the firing line for a while now, like over a long period. But like, why do you love dairy so much? Because I feel like it should be, if you can tolerate it, obviously, it should be in your diet because it's got so many benefits to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you're right. I mean, some people, if they've got a dairy allergy, they can't have dairy, so they need to find alternatives. And, you know, similarly for someone with lactose intolerance, they may need to find another option. But I think, you know, dairy, I don't know why it's vilified. I mean, I can understand it from an environmental aspect and even an ethical standpoint, but you're right. I mean, when I think of a glass of milk has not only protein, it's got long-sustaining energy in the form of low GI carbs, it's got calcium, it's got vitamin B12, it's got phosphorus. I mean, really, it's such a wholesome food, and I just don't understand the rationale of you know, omitting that from someone's diet. And I think a lot of people talk about inflammation these days, and people are really confused by that statement. But there's actually evidence to show that dairy is not pro-inflammatory. It's really only pro-inflammatory if you have an allergy. I mean, that's an obvious one. But you know, if people want to give away dairy because of the environmental impact or from an ethical perspective, you know, that's okay. We need to find something that's just as wholesome. But for the everyday consumer, I think dairy ticks all the nutrition boxes.
I love it. And in regards to that, like, is there a certain amount of, is there a limiting factor that we should have, or is there not, like, you know, you can have 1 to 2 servings a day? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I mean, guidelines are actually 3 serves a day. So serve would be something like a glass of milk, 2 slices of cheese, or the equivalent of about 40 grams, plus about 3/4 of a cup of yogurt. So once again, you know, by and large, the Australian population just don't meet their dairy requirements. And it's true, you can get your calcium from other sources, but we need to take the blinkers off when we talk about foods and realise that there's so much more than just a single nutrient. So if you're comfortable consuming dairy, I mean, it's great in smoothies. It's great on, you know, a glass of milk plus a bit of yogurt on your breakfast cereal, maybe having a tub of yogurt for an afternoon tea snack or even the dessert. You know, it's pretty easy to tick off those, you know, get your requirements in each and every day. And it's something that's, you know, bloody delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because I can drink milk straight from the carton. I'm just a dairy lover. That and cottage cheese, they're just 2 of my favourite dairy sources.
There you go. I love cottage cheese. It's, you know, it's obviously lean and it's such a wonderful source of protein. So, you know, it's a really good one. You know, have cottage cheese on your toast at breakfast if that's something that you like, or add it to a sandwich or have it on crackers. You know, we talk about simple swaps, but these are little things that people can actually add into their diet. And I think, you know, it's only going to be a present for their skeleton.
Exactly right. I love it. So Joel, going into that, like, you know, we've touched on a lot of things in the last half an hour, and I just kind of want to find out, like, what's your stance on nutrition? Because it sounds like, you know, you're not really against anything certain. So do you think that we should be including all foods from all ranges in our diets, or like where are you coming from at the moment?
Yeah, look, I'm really glad that you're giving me the opportunity to talk about this. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I mean, I take very much a non-diet approach to eating, and I think all foods have their role. Foods fit. It's really about context. So, you know, something like cake, I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tell my clients to eat cake every day, but, you know, it could be a sometimes food. You know, it's something that we typically enjoy on our birthdays. And I think the way I look at foods is we've got everyday foods and we've got sometimes foods, and I'm always talking about the core foods, and they're the foods from the various food groups. So things like whole grains, dairy, fruit, veggies, lean sources of protein, be it plant-based or animal-based. And I think they're the foods that we should be consuming more of more often. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that's necessarily off limits. So if you still want to have a little bit of chocolate, it's okay to have a little bit of chocolate. If you still want to have, the occasional dessert, just make it an occasional thing. I think we're so hell-bent on focusing on either single foods or single nutrients or things that we shouldn't be eating that it actually fosters an unhealthy relationship with food. That's something that I'm really passionate about changing with some of my clients. I really try to focus on the mindset of food or around food and actually giving them permission to know that it's okay and allowing themselves to know that it's okay to enjoy certain foods. And obviously we're recording this in early December. We're coming up to the festive season and they don't call it the silly season for nothing. But I think people get so fixated on what they shouldn't be doing. Let's focus on the things that we should be doing. And, diets in general, we know they don't work. 98, 99% of the time they don't work. And that's how the diet industry thrives. And it really thrives on telling people what not to eat. And if they eat something that's forbidden, then, they've stuffed up and they're a failure as a result. But I think if we just change our outlook or our mindset around food and know that everything has its place, people will inherently make healthier choices. Because I know personally, my favourite food is ice cream. And by all means, I don't eat ice cream every day. I probably don't even eat it once a week. But I know that it's there. I know that it's an option if I feel like it. But if somebody was to tell me that I couldn't eat ice cream ever again, that's probably the only thing I would crave. And I'd probably, make every excuse just to have that ice cream. But by knowing that it's okay to have every now and then, it actually sits really comfortably with me. So I would love for people to take away, another little take-home message or tidbit of advice to know that it's okay to enjoy your favourite foods, but maybe just reducing the frequency and even the portion of those foods, but just feeling comfortable with your food choices. I think that's really important.
For sure. And it's like you said, it's like if you said, okay, we're going to, don't touch the red button, you're going to want to touch the red button. And so saying, I can't have this food anymore, it's that restriction that you're going to we always want those things that we can't have. And having that full restriction on yourself, it's not healthy in the long run, especially when those people, we get excited, especially New Year's. A lot of people do the New Year's resolution, I'm going to cut out all unhealthy food, I'm going to just go strict, eat this, and this. And it's just one, we talk about diets not being sustainable for the long run. But number two, you also have a relationship with those foods. When we sit down and we do indulge in Christmas, but it's we're with friends and family, certain foods bring up certain emotions for people too, and it brings people together as a connectedness, and you can't get that, you can't take that out of your life.
How beautiful is that? I love to think about that, and I love that food can evoke certain memories, certain emotions, and obviously there's time and place for these foods, and I think we really need to acknowledge that. I'm really glad you picked up on that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and with you saying that, having that approach of thinking that it's okay to have those foods sometimes, and you've also got to figure out there are some foods, like you said, you love ice cream, but you don't have it all the time. You don't have it every day. But you can have it, and it's those foods you love. If you're going to go and have an ice cream, why not go and get a good quality, go get a good gelato from somewhere, enjoy it, feel okay that you've had it, and then you can go back home and enjoy yourself instead of buying a tub of ice cream, feeling doing the whole thing on one night while watching Netflix and then feeling embarrassed with what you've just done. It's all about that, like you said, it's that flexibility, but it's also having that self-control over yourself too.
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many people come in and they say, they eat the 90% dark chocolate and they actually hate it, but they force themselves to eat it because they think it's good for them. And I just tell people, you know what, go with what you like, just have a small amount, eat mindfully, and, maybe have it, once or twice a week. But, I think it'd be great if people were a little bit more aware and sort of change their philosophies around food and eating. And if we could just give away diets altogether, I think that'd be a great outcome. I think it's pie in the sky stuff, but I think if we can, if people can just have a rethink about diets and their own eating patterns and actually think about, their own dieting history and probably, realizing that it's never really worked out for them, I think there's an opportunity for people to, just maybe recalibrate and actually have a think about a new approach that might be more long-term and sustainable.
Exactly, and that can actually be a bit of a resolution for people. They have that bit of quiet time, just kind of sit back and think what's worked for you in the past, and if it hasn't, what can you try differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I'm going to butcher this quote, but there was something I read recently about, I don't know if it was Thomas Edison, but he said, "I've never failed. I've just realized a number of ways to do things the wrong way." So, we're constantly learning about our bodies and, constantly using that feedback. So, I think be mindful of that, embrace it, and see where there may be areas of change.
For sure. Joel, I really appreciate this last 35 minutes of being on, because we have covered a lot of good stuff, and basically it's just good to know that there are other people out there who are on the exact same level who are speaking the truth. We're not dogmatic in one way of approach. We're not trying to tell people they have to cut out certain things of the diet. It's just finding out what works best for people and making sure that this is a long-term approach instead of a 9-week challenge and trying to just go balls to the wall and cut everything out. So I really appreciate you again for coming on today.
Hi, thanks for coming on.
So what's going on in your world at the moment? Where can people follow you? What are you working on at the moment? Where can we find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, look, I guess I'll start where people can find me. My website is thenutritionguide.com.au, and if you'd like to connect with me on social, I typically use Instagram. That's sort of my main platform, so I'm the _nutrition guy. So feel free to check out some of my recipes and quirky aprons that I don in the kitchen. In terms of work at the moment, I'm sort of here, there, and everywhere. I do a number of different things. So obviously, I do a little bit of work in private practice, so meeting with clients one-on-one. But at the moment, I mostly work actually with food industry. So do a number of different things, from content creation, recipe development, do a bit of work, social media and the media as well, because I'm actually a media spokesperson for the Dietitians Association. So I'm very lucky to do what I do. Every day is different for me, and as I said at the beginning, I get to mostly work from home and in the kitchen. So, very, very lucky, and I really do love what I do.
Doing what you love, having fun, and teaching people along the way. So, guys, I'm going to share all of that stuff in the show notes. I'm going to share with you where you can find Joel. So make sure you give him a follow, especially on Instagram, because he's got some pretty cool stuff on there. And Joel, thank you so much again for coming on, mate, and I'll speak to you next time.
Thanks, Tyson. That's great. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. So now you've listened all the way to the end. That means you get some free goodies. So what you can do is you've got two different options, or you can take them both. I've got an intermittent fasting cheat sheet and a high protein 20 recipe meal guide designed specifically for you in your situation. These meal plans and this intermittent fasting guide is designed to help you burn stubborn belly fat and get in the best shape of your life. So all you have to do is go to the show notes, click on the download link, and they'll get sent straight to your email address. It's as simple as that. They're completely free. They're going to help you transform your body. So go to the show notes now and download your free guides, and I'll speak to you in the next episode.